The clean shoes in the mud. This story happened in what locals used to call Ash Hollow, a dying mining town tucked deep into the hills of western Pennsylvania. It wasn't on most maps anymore, just a name passed around by people who never managed to leave. Coal dust settled on your skin before you learned how to walk, and no matter the season, the sky above Ash Hollow always looked tired, permanently gray, like it had given up trying to clear. My name is Tommy. I grew up in Ash Hollow with my grandmother. I called her Mama Beth. My parents were working oil rigs in Texas, so Mama was the only real family I knew. Mama Beth was tough as nails. She smoked rolled tobacco, wore work boots, and knew the old mountain ways, things they don't teach you in Sunday school. She had an adopted son named Ray, my Uncle Ray. Ray was a gentle giant, a mechanic with grease permanently stained under his fingernails. But he made one fatal mistake. He married Brenda. I hated Aunt Brenda. She was flashy, loud, and she despised our town. She constantly talked about moving to Philadelphia, away from the hillbillies. Eventually, she forced Ray to sell everything and move to the city with their 4-year-old son, Billy. But the city destroyed Ray. 6 months later, Ray came back to Mama's house alone. He told us the truth. Brenda had been cheating on him with a rich restaurant manager. She humiliated Ray, calling him a dirty mechanic. The court gave her full custody of little Billy because Ray was broke and homeless. Ray fell apart. He locked himself in the old barn behind the house, drinking cheap whiskey until he went blind. One night, Mama Beth woke me up. "Tommy, get the flashlight. I heard a noise in the barn." We ran out there. The beam of light hit the rafters. Ray was there. But what haunts me isn't his face. It was his feet. Ray hadn't jumped from high up. His heavy work boots were hovering just 2 inches off the concrete floor. 2 inches. If he had just stretched his legs, he could have stood up, but he kept them curled. He wanted to die. The funeral was miserable. It was raining. Brenda showed up in a borrowed red sports car, wearing a tight dress. She didn't bring Billy. She said, "He doesn't need to see this." Mama looked like she wanted to kill her, but she stayed silent. The haunting started a month later. Under pressure from the family, Brenda reluctantly brought Billy to visit his father's grave. She dropped the boy off and immediately drove to town to get a manicure. Mama told me to take Billy up the hill to the family plot. The grave is on a steep hill behind the barn. It had rained all morning and the path was thick, sticky mud. I had to wear my rubber muck boots just to climb it. At the top, Billy looked tired. "You stay here, Billy," I said. "I'm gonna run down and get us some water. Don't move." I ran down. I was gone for maybe 5 minutes. When I came back, Billy was gone. "Billy!" I screamed. I searched the woods. Then I saw him. Billy was lying on top of Uncle Ray's marble gravestone, fast asleep. I ran over to wake him, but then I froze. I stared at his feet. Billy was wearing brand new white sneakers. To get from where I left him to that grave, he would have had to walk through 10 feet of black ankle-deep mud. My own boots were caked in it. But Billy's shoes, spotless. Pristine white, not a speck of dirt. The soles were clean as new. It was physically impossible. Unless someone big had picked him up, carried him over the mud, and laid him gently on the stone. When I woke him up, Billy rubbed his eyes and smiled. Daddy carried me. He said not to get my new shoes dirty. Brenda turned pale when she heard this. She grabbed Billy and drove back to Philadelphia that night. But she brought something back with her. 2 weeks later, Brenda called Mama Beth at 3 a.m. She was screaming, "Help me! He's here! Ray is here!" She said every night she dreamt of Ray. He was wearing his suicide clothes, the flannel shirt and the jeans. The rope was still around his neck. He wouldn't speak. He would just lunge at her. He would wrap his cold, rough mechanic's hands around her throat and squeeze. Brenda woke up gasping, and when she looked in the mirror, there were bruises, finger-shaped bruises on her neck. By the fourth night, she broke. She drove straight back to Ash Hollow. She fell onto Mama's porch, sobbing. "Take him. Take Billy. I can't do it anymore. Ray is going to kill me." Mama Beth didn't say a word. She walked to the back porch railing, facing Ray's grave on the hill. She took out a pack of Camels, Ray's brand. She lit 3 cigarettes, but she didn't smoke them. She balanced them on the wooden railing. She spoke to the dark. "Ray, I know you're angry. If you agree to keep the boy here with me and let this woman go, then show me." The wind was blowing hard. Normally, the cigarettes would go out or the ash would fly away, but we watched in horror as the 3 cigarettes suddenly glowed bright cherry red. They burned down rapidly, glowing intense orange, as if 3 invisible people were taking long, deep drags at the exact same time. Hiss, hiss. The sound of burning tobacco filled the silence. In seconds, they were just filters. Mama nodded. She turned to Brenda. "He accepts. Leave the boy and get out. Don't ever come back to Ash Hollow." Brenda ran. She left her son without a goodbye. Billy stayed with us. He grew up fine. But there's one strange thing about Billy. Years have passed. The path to the grave is still muddy when it rains. When I walk up there, my pants get covered in dirt. But Billy? Every time he comes back from visiting his dad, no matter how stormy it is, his shoes are always perfectly clean. Last week I watched him walk down that hill. I hid behind an oak tree. I saw Billy walking, but he was walking. Strangely, like he was floating, like his weight wasn't fully on the ground. And when I looked at the mud behind him, there were no small sneaker prints. Instead, sinking deep into the wet earth, step for step right beside him, were the heavy, deep indentations of a pair of size 12 work boots. The footprints of a dead man, still carrying his son, protecting him from the mud of this world. The iron aftertaste. People think demons only live in dark forests or abandoned houses. They are wrong. There's a filthy, ancient kind of magic that exists right now under the fluorescent lights of Chicago's most expensive skyscrapers. My name is Daniel. 7 years ago, I was a rising star in investment banking. I was 28, handsome, ambitious, and I had just been promoted to the 40th floor, the Gold Coast, where the most powerful executives worked. But the 40th floor was also the hunting ground of Ms. Eleanor Vance. Eleanor was the HR director. She was in her 50s, but she fought aging with everything money could buy. She wore designer suits cut low to show cleavage, heavy makeup, and a cloud of overpowering Chanel perfume that announced her arrival from 10 feet away. There was a whisper among the young male associates. Eleanor's a black widow. She hunts young men, and rumors say she has a private room behind her office. My friend Marcus warned me on my first day up there. "Daniel, I know you're good, but stay away from Eleanor. Don't ever be alone with her. Men go into her office and come out, changed." I laughed. I was talented. I played by the rules. What could she do to me? Besides, I had Sarah, my beautiful fiancée, a sharp lawyer. I wasn't afraid of anything. But I was wrong. Eleanor showed her true colors at the company Christmas gala. She was seated across from me. For the entire dinner, she ignored everyone else. She stared only at me. She picked a cherry out of her cocktail, placed it in her mouth, and sucked on it slowly, maintaining intense predatory eye contact. Under the table, I felt a sharp heel rubbing against my calf, sliding up my thigh. I shuddered, kicked her leg away, and ignored her. She didn't get mad. She just gave me a knowing smirk. Weeks later, she started hovering at my desk every day. She would deliberately lean over to check my screen, exposing her chest, her hand with its long, blood-red fingernails resting on my shoulder, tracing my spine. "You look tense, honey," she'd whisper. "Why don't you move your desk closer to my office? I have a private espresso machine. It's very convenient." Her touch made my skin crawl. I realized silence wasn't working. I needed a shield. That afternoon, I brought Sarah to the office for lunch. I held Sarah's hand tightly, walking her right past Eleanor's desk, laughing loudly so the whole floor could see. I wanted to send a message. "I am taken. Back off." Eleanor saw us. She didn't look jealous. She stood in her doorway, arms crossed, looking Sarah up and down with cold, dead eyes. It was the look of a butcher assessing a piece of cattle. Even Sarah, a tough lawyer, whispered to me, "Your boss is creeping me out. Watch your back with her." After that, Eleanor changed tactics. She stopped the overt flirting. She became the sweet office mom. One morning, Eleanor dropped a green smoothie on my desk. "You look pale, Daniel," she said. "I made this at home. It's a secret recipe for stamina. Drink it. Don't hurt my feelings." She stood there, waiting. To be polite, I took a tiny sip. Immediately, I gagged. It didn't taste like vegetables. It tasted metallic, salty, musky, like rusted iron mixed with sewer water. I forced a smile, said it was great, and the moment she turned around, I dumped it in the trash. But I was arrogant. That one tiny sip was enough to open the door. That afternoon, I felt an unnatural exhaustion. I put my head down on my desk for 10 minutes, and in that short nap, I dreamt of Eleanor. In the dream, she wasn't old. She was irresistible, and we were entangled in a passionate embrace. I woke up physically aroused and horrified. I thought, why the hell am I dreaming about that woman? It's disgusting. 2 weeks later, my guard was down. Eleanor walked by and handed me a Starbucks matcha latte. "I bought 2, but I can't drink this one. It's a buy one, get one free promo. It's still sealed. Take it." I saw the Starbucks seal. I thought it was safe. I drank it all. I didn't know the ingredient had been injected beforehand. 30 minutes later, I blacked out. I woke up slumped in a small conference room facing Eleanor. "You're awake, darling," she smiled, reaching over to button my collar. "You were out cold. I couldn't wake you." She walked out. I ran to the bathroom to splash water on my face. In the mirror, I froze. My top button was ripped, and on my neck, hidden just under my collarbone, was a hickey. A dark purple bruise, smeared with her plum-colored lipstick. I buttoned my shirt with shaking hands. What did she do to me during those 45 minutes? Why couldn't I remember anything? After that, I avoided her like the plague. She went silent, and I thought I was safe. But it was just the calm before the storm. On the 10th day, an intern brought me a thick stack of loan documents. "Daniel, we need Eleanor's signature on these ASAP to release the funds. I can't go. I'm busy." I tried to refuse, but I had no choice. Marcus looked at me with fear in his eyes. "Don't go in there, man. My left eye has been twitching all day. It's a trap." I brushed him off. "I'll be in and out in 5 minutes. There are cameras in the hallway. What can she do?" My arrogance destroyed me. I entered Eleanor's office. It felt different from the rest of the building. It was dim, the blinds always drawn tightly. The walls were covered in strange, abstract art depicting women wrestling with black snakes. On her desk, she had pots of strange plants with dark purple leaves. The room didn't smell like perfume anymore. It smelled thick and heavy, a mix of patchouli and rusting metal. It made my chest feel tight. Eleanor greeted me with a cold smile. She put on her reading glasses. "This is a lot of paperwork. My eyes are tired. It will take time. Sit over there." She pointed to the leather sofa in the corner. I sat. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes passed. The silence was suffocating. Just the rustle of paper and the ticking of an old clock. The smell was making me dizzy. I saw a bowl of hard candy on the coffee table. Bored and anxious, I ate one. Immediately, a raging thirst hit me. My throat felt like it was on fire. My tongue stuck to the roof of my mouth. I looked for the water cooler. It was empty. Without looking up, Eleanor spoke. "Thirsty, sugar? There's a pot of jasmine tea on the table. Help yourself." I didn't want it. My gut screamed no, but the thirst from the candy was unbearable. It stripped away my control. I poured a cup. The tea was dark red, thick, not like jasmine at all. I smelled it. It was that smell again. Iron, copper, blood. But I couldn't stop. My hand moved on its own. I drank it in one gulp. The foul, metallic taste made me want to vomit, but it was already down. And then, the lights went out. I don't know how long I was out. The first thing I felt when I woke up was exhaustion. My body felt battered, drained, like I'd run a marathon. My lower back ached. My groin felt numb and empty. It was the specific physical sensation of a man who's had too much sex. I opened my eyes. I was lying on the sofa. The room was empty. Eleanor was at her desk, watching me with a satisfied, sickening smile. "All done, baby. I signed the papers. You can go now. Next time you're tired, just ask for a nap." I grabbed the papers and stumbled out. I looked at the clock in the hall, 1:30 p.m. I had entered at 10:00 a.m., 3.5 hours, gone. I ran to the men's room and locked the stall. I needed to pee. When I unzipped my pants, I wanted to scream. I wasn't wearing underwear. My boxers were gone. I was wearing my suit pants directly against my skin. And when I looked down, I was sticky, covered in dried fluids. I ripped my shirt open, my chest, my stomach, my thighs. They were covered in red scratch marks, bite marks on my shoulders, and I smelled like her. Her cheap perfume mixed with sweat was soaked into my pores. I collapsed on the bathroom floor, dry heaving. I realized the truth. For 3.5 hours, while I was paralyzed by her brew, she had stripped me, used my body like a toy to satisfy her sickest urges, and then dressed me back up. I ran home. I scrubbed my skin until it bled, but I couldn't wash off the dirt. I went online. I researched the symptoms, the metallic taste, the obedience, the blackouts, the sexual exhaustion. It all pointed to one thing: menstrual blood magic, an ancient dark binding spell used to enslave men. I quit the next day. I cut all contact. I accepted that my career was over. I thought I had escaped. But magic doesn't end just because you walk out the door. It gets in your blood. For the next 6 months, I was a broken man. I was completely impotent with Sarah. I loved her, but my body was dead to her. But at night, I was a slave. Every night, I dreamt of Eleanor. In the nightmare, she was an old monster pinning me to the bed, and to my shame, my body would react. I would wake up aroused, hating myself. It took a year of therapy and spiritual cleansing to recover and finally marry Sarah. But I never went back to finance. Recently, I was walking past my old office building. I stood across the street looking up at the 40th floor. Just then, the glass doors opened. A young man, maybe 24, sharp suit, bright eyes, he looked exactly like I did 7 years ago, walked out. He was on the phone, laughing, holding a Starbucks cup. I was about to turn away, but then I froze. Eleanor walked out right behind him. She draped her arm possessively over his shoulder, whispering something in his ear. She laughed, a loud, cackling sound. The young man looked a little uncomfortable, but he wanted to please his boss. He lifted the coffee cup to his lips and took a big gulp. From across the street, I couldn't smell it, but the moment he swallowed, my throat constricted. A phantom taste, salty, metallic, and warm, flooded my mouth, as real as if I were drinking it myself. I stood there, frozen on the sidewalk, watching the young man's eyes glaze over as he leaned into Eleanor's embrace. I knew a new victim had just taken the bait, and I knew that the taste of iron would never truly leave my tongue. Tug of War. In 1998, my family hit rock bottom. My dad lost his job at the steel mill, and we lost our apartment. The only roof we had left over our heads was a rusted, beat-up 1985 Winnebago RV. We drifted through the South, living like nomads. To save money on campgrounds, Dad would find remote clearings in the woods to park for the night. We found a spot deep in the backwoods of Georgia. It was a flat clearing, overgrown with knee-high grass surrounded by ancient oak trees. It was quiet, too quiet. We set up camp. Dad rigged up our electricity by running heavy-duty orange extension cords from an old power pole about 100 yards away, through the bushes, and into our RV. That summer was brutal. The humidity was so thick you could chew it. Inside the RV, I slept on the bottom bunk in the back. Mom and Dad slept on the pull-out sofa up front. To survive the heat, Dad took the safety grill off our old box fan so it would blow harder. It was a metal death trap with razor-sharp blades, spinning violently on the floor next to my bed. The cord for the fan ran out the window, plugged into the extension cord hanging from a tree branch outside. The first 2 nights were peaceful, but on the 3rd night, the tug of war began. It was a still night, not a breath of wind. I was lying awake, sweating, staring at the fan spinning on the floor. Suddenly, crash! The fan slammed face down onto the linoleum floor. The blades screamed against the wood. Clack, 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 clack. Dad woke up yelling, "Lily, be careful! You knocked the fan over!" I wanted to cry. I was 3 feet away from it. I hadn't touched it, but I didn't argue. Dad set it back up and we went back to sleep. The next night, Dad turned the fan off to save power. The RV was an oven. I lay there, staring at the orange extension cord snakes across the floor and out the window. Moonlight was streaming in, illuminating the dust motes. As I watched the cord, I saw it tighten. It didn't snap tight. It pulled slowly, vibrating with tension, like a guitar string being tuned. Screech. The sound of the rubber cord rubbing against the metal window frame. And then, the fan moved. It didn't tip over. It slid. Scrape. Scrape. The heavy metal fan was being dragged across the floor, inch by inch toward the window. I was a curious kid. I didn't think ghosts. I thought raccoons. I thought some animal was messing with our wires. I crawled out of bed. I grabbed the handle of the fan, digging my knees into the floor to anchor it, trying to stop it from sliding out the window. Immediately, the pull from outside got harder. The fan jerked in my hand. The cord vibrated with tension. It was a literal tug of war. I whispered angrily, "Let go," and I leaned forward, popping my head out the open window to yell at the animal. What I saw in the tall grass frozen the scream in my throat. Under the pale moonlight, there were children, not one or two, a swarm of them, maybe 10, maybe 15. They were naked. Their skin was the color of wet clay, gray and lifeless. Some were incredibly thin, ribs poking through skin. Others had swollen bellies. Some had twisted limbs. The oldest looked maybe a year old. The youngest were tiny fetal things, barely formed. They were clustered around our extension cord. One was holding the ankle of another, creating a daisy chain of tiny dead bodies. And the leader, a toddler with a misshapen hydrocephalic head, had the cord in his mouth. He wasn't using his hands. He was clamping down on the thick orange wire with his gums, leaning his entire body weight backward, pulling with everything he had. The others were helping, digging their heels into the dirt, heaving and pulling in silence. Their mouths were open, gasping, but no sound came out. Just a dry, wheezing noise like dead leaves skittering on pavement. I stood paralyzed at the window, staring down at this nursery of nightmares. I looked at them, and they looked at me. Dozens of black, hollow eyes, void of any white, stared up in unison. Just then, my mom woke up. "Lily, what are you doing? Get away from the window." Her voice broke the spell. I let go of the fan. When I looked back outside, the children began to vanish. They didn't disappear instantly. They dissolved, like smoke in a breeze. First the ones in the back, then the ones in the front. The leader with the big head was the last to go. He stared at me for one more second, then his gray form evaporated into the night mist, dropping the heavy cord into the grass with a soft thud. I screamed. I cried hysterically about the naked babies and the mouths with no teeth. My parents thought I was having a heat-induced nightmare. That night, I spiked a fever of 103. I was delirious. The next morning, when my fever broke, Dad decided to build a makeshift fence around the RV to keep out whatever animals had scared me. He grabbed a shovel to dig a post hole. He chose a spot of soft earth right near the back tire, exactly where I had seen the children. He drove the shovel into the ground. The dirt was strangely loose. He brought up a pile of black soil. Crack. The shovel hit something brittle. Dad bent down and picked up a white fragment. He wiped off the dirt. His face went pale. He stumbled back, dropping the object. It was a femur bone, but it was tiny, only as long as a man's finger. Dad started digging frantically with his hands. He pulled up a skull. It was small, fragile as an eggshell, the eye sockets packed with mud, and beneath it, a pit of bones, ribs, arms, jaws, all tiny, all jumbled together in a chaotic mess. My dad, a man of steel who never showed weakness, vomited right there in the grass. We realized then where we had parked. We were sitting on top of a mass grave, an unmarked potter's field. Locals later told us that decades ago, a poorhouse or an orphanage used to stand nearby. When the unwanted babies died from sickness, starvation, or neglect, they didn't get funerals. They were wrapped in rags and thrown into a pit, layer upon layer. And last night, we had driven our heavy RV right over their resting place. We had plugged our lights into their darkness. Dad didn't say a word. He gently gathered the bones he had disturbed and placed them back into the earth, covering them with soil. He found 2 sturdy sticks and used his shoelace to bind them together, fashioning a crude wooden cross. He drove it into the soft earth at the head of the grave. Then, he went into the RV and grabbed a bag of hard candies, our only treat. He unwrapped them one by one and scattered them in a circle around the grave, the bright colors standing out against the black dirt. He took off his hat and held it against his chest. "I'm sorry, little ones," he whispered, his voice shaking. "We didn't know. We're leaving now." We packed up and drove away within the hour. We never looked back. It's been 20 years. I thought I had escaped them. But yesterday, I walked into the living room and saw my 3-year-old daughter playing. She was holding one end of a jump rope. She was facing the open closet door, staring into the dark. She was giggling, leaning her weight backward, her heels digging into the carpet in a tug-of-war stance. "Pull harder," she laughed. I froze. The jump rope was pulled tight. It hovered in the air, taut as a bowstring. Something inside the dark closet was holding the other end. And then I heard it. Coming from the shadows, a wet, wheezing sound, scrape, scrape. The sound of tiny naked heels dragging against the floorboards, slowly pulling my daughter into the dark. Hole in the tarp. It's me, Lily. I'm the girl whose father dug up a mass grave of children underneath our RV. I'm the girl who played tug of war with a ghost over a box fan. I thought that was the end of it. I thought burying those tiny bones and leaving candy on the grave meant we were safe. I was wrong. The dead don't let go that easily. 3 years later, in 2001, my family returned to that cursed ground. We were still poor. We heard the town nearby was hosting a massive fall fair and needed seasonal workers. Hunger outweighed fear, so we drove back to the edge of the woods, back to the place where my father had unearthed the mass grave. This time, the clearing wasn't empty. It had become a tent city for carnival workers and drifters. Dozens of ragged tents and rusted RVs were parked bumper to bumper. My parents set up a small stand selling hot dogs and lemonade to the fairgoers. To wash up, the men in the camp built a makeshift shower at the edge of the woods. It was primitive, just 4 wooden posts wrapped in cheap blue tarps with a water tank rigged up top. That shower is where my second nightmare began. It was the last night of the fair. The camp was deserted. Everyone was in town watching the fireworks. My mom told me to go take a shower so we could pack up and leave early the next morning. I grabbed my towel and a flashlight and walked to the edge of the woods. It was pitch black. The wind was howling through the pines. I stepped inside the shower stall, hanging my flashlight on a nail. The yellow beam lit up the crinkled blue plastic walls. I turned on the water. It was freezing, but I scrubbed quickly, wanting to get out of there. Suddenly, I heard it. Thump, thump, thump. Running footsteps, heavy rhythmic pounding on the dirt right outside the tarp. Not one person, many. And then came the laughter. He, ha 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 ha. I froze. I thought it was the local boys peeping on me again. It had happened before. Angry and embarrassed, I scooped up a cup of water and splashed it hard against the tarp wall. "Get lost!" I screamed. "I'm telling my dad, you perverts!" The water hit the plastic with a loud slap, but the laughter didn't stop. It got louder. The footsteps accelerated, thump, 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 thump. They were running in a circle around the shower stall. Round and round, faster and faster. It sounded like a stampede of wild horses, but lighter, crunching on dry leaves. Fear took over. I dropped to the muddy ground, curling into a ball, covering my chest. "Dad! Mom! Help me!" I screamed until my throat burned, but the camp was empty. No one came. The noise outside was deafening now. A cacophony of giggles, whispers, and thumping feet, swirling around me like a tornado. After 5 minutes of terror, my fear turned into a morbid curiosity. I wiped my eyes. I saw a small hole in the blue tarp, about the size of a cigarette burn. Trembling, I leaned forward. I pressed my eye against the hole. I wish I had closed my eyes forever. Outside, under the pale moonlight, I saw a procession of the dead. Dozens, maybe hundreds of figures were holding hands, forming a massive human chain circling my shower. They were moving so fast they blurred. Through that tiny peephole, I saw their faces flash by like a horrific kaleidoscope. I saw babies, blue and lifeless, crawling in the dirt. I saw men with their skulls crushed, faces masked in blood. I saw old women with no eyes, just black empty sockets staring into the void. I saw bodies green with rot, bloated from drowning. Some had no heads at all. Every lost soul, every forgotten corpse from that cursed potter's field had risen for a final dance. They were skipping, hopping, dragging their broken limbs. Their mouths were stretched wide in silent screams or frozen grins, but their eyes were dead. Then, a woman's face, her lips stitched shut with black thread, flashed past the hole. Her dead eyes locked onto mine. The world went black. I collapsed onto the wet mud. When I woke up, I wasn't in the shower. I was in a sterile white bed, hooked up to machines. I was in the county hospital. I'd been in a coma for 2 days. My parents told me they found me lying in the mud, cold as ice. But the nightmare wasn't over. It had just followed me inside. But the nightmare wasn't over. It had just followed me inside. For the next 4 nights, I became a vessel. The scariest part isn't what I saw. It's what I didn't see. To me, those 4 days are a black hole. I have no memory of them. Everything I'm about to tell you is what my parents and the terrified nurses told me later. They said that during the day I was comatose, but when the sun went down, I vacated the premises, and they moved in. It started at midnight. My mom told me I suddenly sat bolt upright, my eyes wide open but unfocused, but the posture wasn't mine. I hunched over, my spine twisting into a painful curve. I climbed out of bed and started shuffling around the room, hands clasped behind my back, pacing like a prisoner. When I spoke, my voice wasn't the voice of an 11-year-old girl. It was deep, gravelly, and sounded like wet lungs. "Hey, partner," I wheezed at the empty air. "Got a light? I need a smoke. My chest is burning." My dad tried to guide me back to bed. I shoved him away with the strength of a grown man. I threw a heavy metal tray table across the room like it was cardboard. The commotion brought the orderlies. It took 3 grown men to hold me down. Finally, a nurse jammed a needle of sedative into my thigh. My body went limp instantly, collapsing into the darkness. When I woke up the next morning, my throat was raw, and my muscles ached like I had been in a prize fight. I asked my dad why my arms were bruised. He just looked away and cried. The sedation wore off by the next evening. This time, I didn't wake up angry. I woke up wrong. The nurse said I started skipping, hop, hop, hop. I bounded down the sterile hospital hallway, giggling. But it wasn't a happy sound. It was a high-pitched, screeching cackle that made the other patients ring their call buttons in terror. I raided the bedside table of a sleeping woman, shoving dry cookies into my mouth, choking and laughing at the same time. When my mother ran out to catch me, I didn't recognize her. I looked at her with dead, glassy eyes. Then, I hissed like a wildcat. I lunged at her, raking my fingernails down her cheek, drawing blood. I screamed, a sound so loud it blew the filaments in the overhead lights. Security didn't take chances this time. They tackled me. They dragged me back to the bed and strapped my wrists and ankles with leather restraints. I spent the rest of the night trashing against the straps, growling and biting the air, until exhaustion finally shut my body down. I woke up the next morning tied to the bed. I begged them to untie me, crying that I hadn't done anything. My mom had a bandage on her face. She didn't speak to me. That night was the saddest of all. The nurses said I stopped fighting the straps. Instead, I sat up as far as the restraints would allow. I began to rock back and forth, rhythmically, endlessly. I mimed holding a baby in my arms. I looked down at my empty chest with a look of pure, shattering heartbreak. Hush now, I hummed, a lullaby with no melody. Then, I started to wail. I screamed names that no one knew. I begged the doctors to save my baby. I cried until my tear ducts ran dry. I cried until I hyperventilated and passed out from lack of oxygen. The room fell silent, leaving only the sound of the heart monitor beeping steadily in the dark. Every night, a different spirit had taken the wheel. I was just a hotel for the dead. My parents were at their breaking point. They sat by my bed, watching their daughter's face contort into strangers, praying for the dawn. At exactly noon on the fourth day, the fever broke. My eyes snapped open. The cloudiness was gone. The dead were gone. I looked around the room, confused. My wrists were chafed and red from the straps. My mom was sobbing. "Mommy," I whispered, my voice small and terrified. "Why am I tied up? Why does my body hurt so much?" The doctors called it a psychotic break. They unstrapped me, but my father didn't wait for a diagnosis. He saw the look in the nurses' eyes. They were scared of me. He knew we had to run. The moment I was discharged, Dad drove us straight to the campsite. He was moving with a frantic, desperate energy. He didn't even pack our clothes. He sold the RV to a junk dealer for pennies on the dollar. He left the hot dog stand right where it was. He took that handful of cash and bought 3 one-way bus tickets north. My mom asked him why we had to go so far. Why not just the next town over? Dad grabbed her shoulders, his eyes wild. "We have to get out of their range, Mary," he whispered, checking the rearview mirror. "These things, they are territorial. They are bound to that soil, to that specific patch of woods. If we stay in Georgia, they can still smell us. We need to break the tether. We need to go where the earth is frozen." He believed that ghosts were like a radio signal. If you drive far enough, the static eventually fades, but if you stay close, the signal stays strong. We got on the Greyhound bus an hour later. We sat in the back row, huddled together. As the bus pulled onto the highway, I didn't sleep. I was terrified to close my eyes. I kept waiting for that heaviness to return. I kept waiting for my hand to twitch or my voice to change. Every mile marker we passed felt like a battle. Mile 10, mile 50, mile 100. With every hour that put distance between us and that potter's field, I felt lighter. It was a physical sensation, like a tight rubber band around my chest was slowly loosening. The voices in my head, which had been a constant background noise for days, started to fade into silence. I realized then that Dad was right. They hadn't let me go. I'd just run out of their leash. We didn't stop until we hit Michigan. We saw snow. We started over. I grew up. I'm 33 now. I have a normal life. But I still live with a nagging question. Did I really escape? Or am I just out of range? Sometimes I wonder if that connection is truly broken, or if it's just stretched incredibly thin, spanning across the country like an invisible wire. What if I ever have to go back south? What if I fly over Georgia? Will the signal pick back up? Will the static return? Will those children be waiting for me, right where I left them, holding the other end of the string, ready to pull me back into the dark? I don't know, and I pray to God I never find out. So I stay in the cold. I stay in the north. Because I know that somewhere in the humid woods of the south, there is a hole in a blue tarp, and an eye looking through it, waiting for me to come home. The Lost Pacifier, in room 3E4. My name is Tony. I'm 28 years old, and at the time, I was living what I thought was the dream. I worked in marketing for a mid-sized ad agency downtown. I had a decent salary, a solid group of friends, and a bachelor pad in the north side. It wasn't a penthouse, but it was mine. I loved the red brick architecture, the history soaked into the sidewalks, the way the city felt alive even when it was buried under 2 feet of snow. My apartment was in a walk-up building, one of those places with creaky hardwood floors and steam radiators that hissed and clanked in the middle of the night. I liked the noise. It made me feel like I wasn't alone. But the silence, that's what gets you in the end. Life was good. Until my girlfriend, Elena, hit a wall. Elena was 25, a senior computer science major with long, dark hair and the kind of smile that could light up a dive bar. We met on Tinder 2 years ago. No fireworks, no drama, just a slow, steady burn that turned into something real. She was the grounded one, the perfectionist. She was balancing her final year thesis on artificial intelligence with a barista gig at a coffee shop up in Evanston. She was exhausted. Her living situation was a nightmare. She was stuck in an old student dormitory that smelled like stale beer and despair. The walls were paper thin. She'd be trying to code a neural network at 2 a.m. while the guys next door were throwing a frat party, and the heavy trucks on the nearby interstate rattled her teeth every 10 minutes. Her lease was up, and with Chicago rent prices skyrocketing, she was drowning. I remember the night everything changed. We were at a deep dish pizza joint in Wrigleyville. The place was loud, smelling of burnt cheese, tomato sauce, and yeast. The neon signs buzzed overhead, casting a flickering red light on our table. Elena looked wrecked. Her eyes were rimmed with dark circles, her skin pale. She was picking at the crust of her pizza, staring into space. "Move in with me," I said. The words just tumbled out. My heart gave a little kick against my ribs. "Seriously, Elle, my place is huge. 2 bedrooms. You get the lake view at night. It's quiet. You're closer to the train for your internship. We split the rent, you save money, I save money, and I get to see you every day." Elena looked up. For a second, I saw hope in those big brown eyes, but then the light faded. She shook her head, a sad, tired smile playing on her lips. "I can't, Tony. You know I love you, but I need absolute focus for this thesis. You're up late gaming with the boys or working on campaigns. I'll get distracted." She paused, looking down at her hands. "And my parents. You know how traditional they are. If they find out I'm living in sin with my boyfriend before there's a ring on my finger, they'll cut me off. No tuition, no support. They might not even speak to me again." I couldn't argue with that. Her parents were old school, the kind who believed in strict boundaries. But I was a marketing guy. My job was to find solutions. "Okay," I said, leaning in. "Plan B. Listen to this. You know the apartment right next to mine, Unit 304. It just opened up. I'm in 303. We share a wall. The doors are 5 feet apart in the hallway. It's perfect. You have your own space to study. Your parents won't know a thing because legally you have your own address. But at night, all we have to do is open a door. Elena blinked. She processed the logic like the programmer she was. Then, she smiled. A real smile. Deal, she said. That actually sounds perfect. That afternoon, I took her to see it. The building was a mix of old charm and modern renovation. The hallway was long, lined with polished wood, smelling of lemon polish and old dust. Unit 304 was clean. It had a small kitchenette, a pristine bathroom, and a bay window that looked out over a street lined with ancient oak trees, their bare branches clawing at the gray sky. Elena signed the lease right there on the counter. She was so happy. She started planning where to put her coding setup, her abstract paintings, her life. I stood in the doorway watching her spin around the empty room, and I felt a knot of guilt tighten in my stomach, a cold, heavy stone of dread, because I had lied to her, or at least I had omitted the truth, a truth that, looking back, should have sent us both running for the hills. I hadn't told her about Sarah. Sarah was the previous tenant of 304, a single mom, maybe 35, an ER nurse who worked brutal shifts. She lived there with her 7-year-old daughter, Lily. Lily was a sweet kid, all blonde curls and missing front teeth. We used to chat in the hallway. Sometimes Sarah would ask me to watch Lily for 10 minutes while she ran to the corner store for milk. They seemed normal, just people trying to get by. Until that night. The night the winter wind wasn't the only thing howling. It was about a month before Elena moved in. 3 a.m., dead of winter. I was deep asleep when a sound ripped me from my dreams. Bang, bang, bang. Someone was hammering on my door, not knocking, hammering. My heart leaped into my throat. I stumbled out of bed, adrenaline flooding my system. I grabbed a baseball bat I kept by the bed and threw open the door. Sarah and Lily practically fell into my apartment. They looked like they had just escaped a war zone. Sarah's face was the color of ash. Her hair was wild, matted with sweat. Her eyes, I will never forget her eyes. They were wide, bloodshot, terrifyingly empty of everything but panic. Little Lily was clinging to her mother's leg, shaking so hard her teeth chattered, her face buried in Sarah's coat. Sarah? What the hell? Is it a burglar? Is there a fire? I stammered, scanning the hallway behind them. It was empty, silent. Sarah slammed my door shut and locked it, her hands trembling so badly she fumbled with the deadbolt. She backed away from the door, staring at it as if something was about to burst through the wood. "No," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Not a burglar, Tony. Please let us stay, just for tonight. I can't go back in there. It's watching me. It wants me to kill her." I froze. Who? Who wants you to kill who? She didn't answer. She just sank to the floor, wrapping her arms around Lily. The little girl was whispering something into her mother's chest, over and over. I couldn't make it out. I let them sleep on my pull-out couch. I made coffee. I sat up all night with the bat across my lap. The next morning, they were gone. Sarah broke her lease. She left her security deposit. She didn't even take all their stuff, just clothes and Lily's favorite toys. Before she got into the cab, she looked at me one last time. "I was afraid I was going to do it, Tony," she said, her voice hollow. "I was afraid I was going to hurt my baby. Do yourself a favor. Don't go near that room." At the time, I rationalized it. I told myself Sarah was having a breakdown. Nurse burnout, stress from her divorce, sleep deprivation. It happens. People snap. It wasn't a ghost, it was mental illness. So when Elena wanted the apartment, I kept my mouth shut. I thought, Elena is strong. Elena is rational. It's just an empty room. I was an idiot. The first week was paradise. We were neighbors. We'd wake up, open our doors, and share coffee in the hallway like it was our own private balcony. We cooked dinner together. I'd grill burgers. She'd make salads. Then we'd retreat to our separate caves to work. It was the perfect balance, but on the 10th night, the atmosphere shifted. It was 11:30 p.m. I was at my desk, tweaking a digital ad campaign, the blue light of the monitor hurting my eyes. My phone buzzed against the wood, a text from Elena. Hey, I think the previous tenant came back. She's looking for something. I frowned and dialed her number immediately. Elena, what's going on? Her voice was a harsh whisper. Tony, I'm trying to sleep, but there's someone knocking. I look through the peephole. There's a woman standing there. She looks messy. Old nightgown, hair all over the place. My blood ran cold. What is she saying? She keeps whispering through the door, Elena said, sounding annoyed but also unsettled. She says, honey, open up. I used to live here. I forgot something. Just let me in to get it. I'll be quick. I gripped the phone tighter. Describe her. Can you see her face? Not really, Elena whispered. The hallway light is flickering. It's dark. But she keeps muttering to herself. She's saying, it's crying. He won't stop crying. Let me get the thing so he stops. I told her to go away, to come back tomorrow, but she won't leave. She just keeps tapping on the wood. Tap, tap, tap. I imagined the sound. Elena, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Listen to me. Do not open that door. Lock the deadbolt. Put the chain on. It's probably just a junkie from the neighborhood. I'm calling the landlord in the morning. Okay, she said, her voice small. I'm scared, Tony. I stayed awake all night, listening to the silence of the hallway, waiting for a scream, but nothing came. The next morning, I called Stan, the building manager. He was an old guy, smoker's cough, didn't care about much. Tony, look, Stan wheezed over the phone. It's a city. Weirdos get into the building sometimes, probably just looking for a warm place to crash. I'll check the cameras, but don't worry about it. 2 days passed. Nothing happened. The air felt heavy, though. The hallway felt colder than usual. Then came the night of the attack. It was 2 a.m. My phone rang. The sound was piercing in the quiet apartment. I swiped answer. Tony, help me! Elena's scream was primal, terrified. Then the sound of crashing, glass breaking, a heavy thud. I didn't think. I grabbed my spare key to 304 and sprinted out of my apartment in my boxers. I jammed the key into her lock, twisted it, and kicked the door open. Elena! The room was freezing, absolutely freezing. The lamp by the bed was smashed on the floor. Elena was lying sprawled on the hardwood, unconscious. I scooped her up. She was light, too light. I carried her back to my place, kicked my door shut, and locked every lock I had. I laid her on my bed and slapped her cheeks gently. Elle, wake up, she gasped, her eyes flying open. She scrambled backward, pushing herself into the corner of the bed, hyperventilating. It took me 15 minutes to calm her down enough to speak. When she finally did, her story made my blood freeze in my veins. I was sleeping, she sobbed, clutching my arm. And then I felt cold, like ice cold. I opened my eyes, and she was there, Tony. She was inside the room. The woman from the hall? Yes, but she wasn't at the door. She was standing right by my bed. She was holding a baby. She looked at me. Her face was white, Tony, like paper. Her lips were purple. She said, "Honey, help me find it. My baby is fussy. I can't find that thing." Elena was shaking so hard the bed vibrated. I was paralyzed. I looked at the baby in her arms. I wanted to help, but then I saw it. The baby. Oh God, Elena gagged. The baby was blue. Its neck was twisted to the side. It was dead, Tony. It was a corpse, and its face was covered in scratches. I screamed. Elena continued, tears streaming down her face. I screamed, "Your baby is dead. It's dead." And the woman, her face changed. Her eyes rolled back. She threw the dead baby onto my bed and she lunged at me. She grabbed my throat. Her hands were like ice. She screamed, "My baby isn't dead. You liar. Give it to me." Then she started choking me and I blacked out. This wasn't stress. This wasn't a junkie. I wrapped Elena in a blanket. I tried calling Stan again. Voicemail. I banged on the floor. Nothing. I knew what I had to do. I pulled out my phone and scrolled back months in my call log until I found Sarah's number. It was late, but I didn't care. She answered on the fourth ring. Her voice was guarded. "Hello? Sarah, it's Tony, from the old building." Silence. "Sarah, listen to me. 304. Something is in there. My girlfriend was just attacked. It tried to kill her. You need to tell me the truth. What happened to you and Lily?" I heard a sharp intake of breath on the other end. Then, quiet sobbing. "I'm sorry, Tony," Sarah wept. "I didn't want to say anything. I thought people would think I was crazy. I thought they'd take Lily away from me." "Tell me," I demanded. "It started slow," Sarah whispered. "Lily is 7. She stopped sucking her thumb years ago, but the first week we moved in, she started doing it again. Every night, sucking her thumb, loud like a starving infant, and she started crying. But it wasn't Lily's voice. It was higher, needier. She would walk around in her sleep saying, 'Mama, I want the thing. Find it for me.'" Sarah paused, her voice trembling with horror. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was me. There were nights I would wake up, and my hands would be around Lily's throat. "Oh my God," I breathed. "I didn't want to do it," Sarah cried. "It wasn't me. It was like someone else was moving my arms. In my head, I could hear a baby screaming, screaming, screaming. It drove me insane. I just wanted it to stop. I would wake up hitting Lily, shaking her. The last night, I almost choked her to death. She screamed, 'Mommy, don't,' and that snapped me out of it. I realized I was going to kill my own child." "I did some research after I left," Sarah continued, sniffing. 3 years ago, a woman lived there, a young mother, postpartum depression. Her husband left her. He was abusive. She was alone with a newborn. The baby had colic, cried 24 hours a day. The neighbors said she was always looking for the baby's pacifier. She was obsessed with it. It was the only thing that made him quiet. One night, she couldn't find it. The baby wouldn't stop screaming. She snapped. She strangled him to make him be quiet. Then she realized what she'd done, and she killed herself. "The ghost," Sarah whispered. "She's stuck in the loop. She's looking for the pacifier. She possesses people to find it, and when she can't, she replays the murder. Get out, Tony. Get out now." I hung up. The apartment was silent. Elena was staring at me, wide-eyed. "We're leaving," I said. "Now. We're going to Sarah's place. She said she has room." "My stuff," Elena whispered. "My laptop, my passport, my wallet. It's all in 304. I looked at the door. I didn't want to go back in there, but we needed those things. "Stay here," I commanded. "Do not move." I walked into the hallway. It was unnaturally still. The air in front of door 304 shimmered like heat haze, but it was freezing cold. I pushed the door open. The room was tossed, sheets torn off the bed, books scattered. I grabbed Elena's bag. I shoved her laptop in. I saw her wallet on the nightstand. I grabbed it. In my haste, I knocked the spare key off the table. It skittered across the floor and slid under the built-in wardrobe, a heavy, old-fashioned thing bolted to the wall. "Damn it," I hissed. I dropped to my knees. I turned on my phone flashlight and peered into the gap under the wardrobe. It was a dark, dusty slit, barely an inch high. It looked like no one had cleaned under there in decades. Thick gray dust bunnies rolled around like tumbleweeds. I reached in, my fingers brushing against the cold wood. I felt the key, but next to the key, something else glinted in the light, something blue. I frowned. I hooked my finger around it and dragged it out. I sat back on my heels, holding the object in my palm. It was a pacifier, old plastic, covered in a thick layer of grime and dust. The rubber nipple was yellowed with age. The realization hit me like a physical blow. This was it, the missing object, the thing she was looking for. It must have rolled under there years ago, lost in the shadows, driving a mother to madness and murder. The air in the room suddenly grew heavy. The temperature dropped 10 degrees in a second. I could see my breath misting in the air. I stood up. I placed the dirty pacifier gently on the center of the wooden table. "Here," I said, my voice shaking but loud. "It's here. I found it. Don't look anymore. Please, leave us alone." I grabbed the bag and backed out of the room. I reached for the doorknob to pull it shut, and then I heard it. From the empty room, from the empty air right above the table. Suck, suck, suck. It was wet, rhythmic. The sound of a baby greedily sucking on a pacifier, and then a sigh, a long, ragged exhalation, a woman's sigh, not of anger, but of pure, exhausted relief. I slammed the door and locked it. We left that night. We moved into the building Sarah recommended. We never went back to the Northside apartment. I heard later that Unit 304 is still rented out. It's cheap, so students always take it, but nobody stays longer than a month. Sometimes, I wonder if finding the pacifier broke the curse, or if she's still there, eternally nursing a ghost baby, waiting for the moment she loses it again. Because even if you find what you lost, you can't undo what you did.